About a year ago when I made that video talking about how I absolutely adore swordplay games. Well, this game came out of the freaking blue and I adore it. Hey, what's going on, geeks? Maxusthebeast is here. And welcome to a new little series. This is going to be my first attempt of doing an actual game review, which is something I have been wanting to do for a while, just never had really the confidence to really take a swing at it. But now, we're going to do so. But here's the little twist that we're kind of throwing in here to make it unique from every other freaking review series on YouTube. This series is called Out of the Blue Reviews, where I review games that just took me by complete surprise, whether that means that I got really impressed by them, and I was really impressed by them, or that their release date just came out of the freaking blue. And this game was one of them. Before we go into actual details on the game, I'm going to give you a bit of a background. This game is Mordhau, which is a German word meaning using the hilt of a sword to bash people with. It was a technique used by by knights back when stronger armor was beginning to be used, because the armor prevents swords from just, cleaving through people. So they would flip their sword around, hold the sword by the blade, and then hit people with the hilt to sort of bash them. And that's what a Mordhau is. And this game I have been following for around 2 years. Because, like I said, I adore swordplay games. And I know what some of you might be thinking. Max, this just looks like a really shiny chivalry. And in a way, you're sort of right. This game's combat system works sort of similarly to chivalry. And I will get into the differences in a minute. But this game has been in closed alpha for several years. It's been worked on for 4 years, and for at least 2 of those it's been in the closed alpha. And only a select handful of individuals, lucky people, were chosen to be participants in this beta. Or alpha, rather. But out of the freaking nowhere, on April the 29th, which was Monday, this game released on Steam. And I must say, I was getting ready to go to bed the other night, right? And I decided to do one quick little peek on Steam and see what's going on. And on the front page I see Mordhau, now available. I'm like, holy crap! I've been following this thing for like 2 years. Yeah, I didn't even hear anything about a Steam release. And then suddenly, just check Steam feed. There it is. It's in the top sellers. Okay. I'm hype. And I must say, jumping in today, I have some gripes, but I feel like all of my complaints can be worked out in time. And I will get to complaints momentarily. So, we're going to sort this down into several points. First of all, let's talk about graphics. As you can see, this game is gorgeous. And it runs like butter. Well, granted, there are a couple hiccups. Maybe that's my system. But the graphics are really good. The effects and detail put into things is incredible. Especially the character models. If you notice on this knight I'm fighting, the tassels of his cloak, or tunic I guess, are billowing around as he walks. And this goes for all cloth-based clothing items. If it has loose strands of cloth dangling around, they will jostle around, and it looks like cloth. But what's really impressed me is, as brutal as it is, the gore. when you hit somebody, a mark will be put into them based on where your sword hit and how it hit. If it's a stab, you'll see a puncture. If it's just a very sloppy gash, you'll see a slice appear on them. If you get shot by a bow, or someone throws an axe or a sword into you and you pull it out, there's a puncture. It's very detailed, and I absolutely love it. Being a fan of Chivalry, and Chivalry had a system sort of similar to this, just not nearly as detailed. I was hoping that something like this would be a feature, and I was pleasantly surprised when I start fighting my opponents and realizing that I'm actually damaging them. To the point where I can see gashes and stuff. And Chivalry, as you may know, featured decapitation and dismemberment. This game does the same. However, there's different levels to it. Some weapons the blunt weapons can only really dismember heads. And when you hit somebody's head, it explodes. If you land a killing blow to their head will explode. It's not clean, it's not tidy, it's not a clean cut through, it's a bash. And you see pieces of their skull just boom, just fly around. It's like freaking Mortal Kombat, which came out last week. But the blunt weapons are brutal. And next up are like the axes and stuff. Some of the heavy bladed weapons, like long swords, large battle axes, and stuff like that. When you cut through a limb or their head, it'll just cleanly just cut on through. And, you know, their body part will fly away somewhere. It's a clean cut. However, with the shorter weapons, like the cleaver, which is a sidearm for the archer, just a regular sword, smaller axe, when you cut into somebody, cut into like a limb or even their head, it's not a clean or full dismemberment. It just cuts into them and their limb is left dangling. You can, and I'd also like to mention, you can cut off arms, legs, head, hands, and feet. Well, if you cut off somebody's arms, legs, or head, that's a kill. However, occasionally, or very rarely, you'll encounter the situation where you cut off somebody's hand mid-fight. They drop their weapon, and in that state, they're essentially useless. And when that happens to you, if you're in first person, this game is in first person and third person, by the way. If you are in first person, you see your character's holding his stub right in front of his face, screaming. It's freaking brutal, but it's detailed. And it adds a different aspect to fighting because it means that if you're not careful, somebody could take your hand off and you're a sitting duck. Of course, you can still run away if you're missing a hand, but you can't really do anything in retaliation other than flee. If you lose a leg, you're like the Black Knight from Monty Python and the Holy Grail. You're just hopping around. And, of course, you're very slow, but you still have access to your weapons. Now then, talk about graphics and character design and character models and all that. Every map looks incredibly detailed and looks amazing. I'm running the game currently in ultra settings. Everything is maxed out. And it looks gorgeous. Like I said, I have experienced a handful of hiccups, but they're few and far in between. So, it definitely, if you want to play this game max settings, it will require a bit of beef, but you can do it, and if you do, it looks gorgeous. Although, the settings menu is incredibly detailed. and you'll be able to customize everything to the way you like it. So don't worry about a thing as far as the settings go. You can tone them down or you can raise them up. But everything looks beautiful. But let's talk about the most important thing when it comes to playing a video game. The gameplay. As I mentioned earlier, this game plays sort of like Chivalry, just at the same time, very different. The game is broken up into a class-based system, where you have, starting out, I believe it's like 9 or 10 starting mercenaries to choose from. I know some of you are thinking like TF2 right now, but hold your horses for a second. There's like 9 or 10 base mercenaries you start with, right? We have the Brigand, Protector, Huntsman, Knight, Raider, Veteran, Footman, Scoundrel, Engineer, and then Unnamed. Get into that in a second. The first little group here, the Brigand is a long swordsman, and he has a long sword, a dagger, long sword, short sword, and his fists. Protector has a kite shield and a mace, as well as a smoke grenade, or smoke bomb. The Huntsman is the archer character, so he has a bow, but with customization you can change it to what they call, I believe, a curved bow. There's a long bow, like a curved bow type thing, and then a crossbow. He also has a cleaver as a sidearm, but I believe you can also customize to dagger and short sword. And there's and more than that too, because there's a plethora of weapons in this game. There's the Knight, Raider. I'm not going to go into every one of them, and so forth. Oh, the Engineer is like a bard. He has like a lute, and he can play music on it. It's cool. But the last one, Unnamed, that is the player's custom-made character or custom-made loadout, which is entirely up to you how you want to customize it. You can put on different articles of clothing, armor, weapons, customize the facial and body appearance of your character, etc. And here's a cool thing. Notice the bars to the left of the select screen, of the select menu. We have what looks like a guy running, and then a chest plate. The one that looks like a guy running represents the character's speed, and then the chest plate represents how much armor they will have. If you have a character with higher armor, you're going to be a lot slower, but you can absorb a lot of hits. And if you have more speed, your character is going to be agile, but it's going to be a lot squishier than somebody who has armor. Which adds a bit more, practicality to customizing a character, because it means that the stuff you put on your character actually does have an impact on how the game is played. And of course, though, if you don't want to mess around with character customization and equipping your own person, you have these pre-made characters to choose from. And I'm also kind of meh about the fact that you have to use in-game coins to purchase all the items to customize with. You only have a small selection of items to start with. And right now, the XP system is kind of not working, so you're not getting experience points, and you're not getting gold per win or whatever, or per match. Which is very frustrating, because without the gold and whatever, you're not going to be able to buy what you want. Meaning, as of now, until they fix it, you can't really do anything as far as super customizing goes for your character. However, it is a feature in the game, so when they fix it, So you guys will be able to jump right in and create whoever you want, or whatever you want. I've seen people make Link from The Legend of Zelda. They've themed a character off of their Dark Souls character. You can get really creative with this customization system. And it's really cool that you get to choose from a wide variety of weapons. You get to choose basically what kind of class your character will be. And that the apparel you put on your character will actually have a practical purpose in actual game. Which I think is a really, really cool feature. Now, while I said that combat and gameplay feels very similar to Chivalry, it varies very differently. For starters, Chivalry's directional attacks are based on the direction that you are walking. If you are walking forward, you do downward strikes. If you are strafing, you do side to side. And then you have complex attacks you can use by extra mouse buttons. You scroll your mouse wheel forward, you do a stab. Scroll backward, you do an upper hand attack. Simple, right? And to make it cooler, I guess, experienced Chivalry players would just kind of manipulate the mouse around and they look like ballerinas. The Mordhau devs hated this, so they changed it to where you still have the scroll forward and you stab, the scroll back and you do the upper hand attack type thing. But instead of having to strafe to change your direction, and instead of having to do ballerina tricks to actually, attack a specific direction or to bypass somebody's defense, well, they've changed it up. If you look at my reticle, you can see, well, when I get my sword back out, you can see the little line there. That little line represents direction. If the line is pointing to the left, that's what my attack is going to be from the left. And if it's to the right, it's going to be the right. If it's lower, it's going to be an up strike. If the arrow is pointing into the sky, it's going to be downward. So it's based, instead of on how you're walking, it's based more on direction of your mouse, giving you a lot more control over what you want to do rather than just dance around your opponent. This adds a special line of skill to the game, and the skill cap is incredibly high ceiling. And no amount of time put into Chivalry or any of the other swordplay games I play really prepared me for this, because this is 100% different than all the other games I've played. While it looks like Chivalry and plays sort of like Chivalry, it's not Chivalry and should not be confused with it. Its combat system is much more intuitive. Another interesting system is that if two players are attacking each other and they're doing the same direction attack, their weapons will clash and the players get a second chance to swing again. It's a parry system. You can also, with certain characters and certain weapons, reopposite or riposte. I think riposte is the technical term, but reopposite is like the French thing. But you can riposte, where they stab, you block, and you instantly attack. Your blade does this weird circle thing, and it sounds really cool because it's like grinding up against the opponent's sword, it's like making all this noise. And then you stab them back. It's a counterattack. And it's really satisfying. But it's also goes down to perfect timing. You have to wait for the perfect moment when you block to counterattack. Or else it's not going to work. And you're just going to block. The regular blocks that you do in the game with a one-handed weapon or a two-handed sword or axe, it's just a quick parry or quick block. You can't hold it down. The only thing you can hold down is the shield or your fist. Your fists can't block weapons, they can only block other fists. The shield can block everything, but it can be destroyed if enough pressure is put on it. And it can be bypassed relatively simply. So if someone's smart, they can work their way around the player who is trying to shield spam and work their way through it. In fact, if someone is that adamant about just using their shield to defend, you can corner them. The game has great counters by its own gameplay to counter cheap tactics. Now, let's get into some things that I'm not too big of a fan of. Like I said, there are some stutters and frame rate, which is expected. Okay, I was sort of expecting it. Chivalry had a sort of similar issue at times. They've patched it since then, but for a while, Chivalry was kind of choppy for some people, myself included. But I also expect this to be fixed because this is the same week as the game was released. So I can't expect absolute perfection week 1. Another thing that I'm not a big fan of is server connection. And again, this goes down to the game being so fresh and being in the Steam top sellers, which is great for a Swordplay game to be this high up in popularity. But it also means that servers are going to be on the fritz. I've had trouble connecting to servers all day today, and matchmaking is a horrible disaster, where you'll wait for like 10 minutes, find a game, turns out it's an empty server, so they just throw bots in there. That's what half of this turned out to be. Some of me messing around with, the game, starting out with bots, and then me matchmaking and failing. So matchmaking can be kind of funky. So the most reliable way to find a server is to go to the good old-fashioned server browser, which thank goodness they implemented that. So I can actually find games, although I will say it takes a while for the server list to pop up. You'll have to wait a bit, and then it'll pop up and you'll connect. However, like I said, servers are kind of on the fritz, so I've had serious ping issues. I don't know if that's just my overactive, crappy internet, or if that has an issue with game servers. With this kind of stuff, I don't know. And I think, though, a lot of my complaints with the game can be summed up with this is the week 1 of the game being out. There's still a lot that the game has left to do. A lot of patches, a lot of things have to tweak and fix. But I must say, in terms of gameplay, the game is incredibly challenging, but it's fun. It's skill-based, which is what I like about Swordplay games, is that they focus more on skill rather than cheap gimmicks and tactics. I mean, I haven't even begun to scratch the surface of all the stuff you can do with the combat in this game. There's different stances. The Mordhau stance is some of the heavier weapons. The spear and the battle axe have different stances, which make them swing faster, sacrificing a bit of damage. The rapier and the character who uses a rapier which is a scoundrel, has a dash move, which is used as a dodge. You can't dash forward, but you can dodge to the side and to the back. So it's a good way to get out of range of some of the heavier attacks that will put you down in one blow. Because there are one-shot kills. So it means you have to be very, very protective of what you're doing. You gotta be on top of your game at all times. And another thing that I'm struggling with is the community. For the most part, and I'm not saying that the community is toxic or anything, because the community themselves, as in the people and how they behave to one another in chat and such, is very polite and very respectable. They will go after people who are picking on friendlies because, like I mentioned earlier, the engineer has the loot. Some players prefer to just run around the map and play music, and they are considered friendly. And it is considered rude to kill these friendly people. And so if you find out that there is a person killing friendlies, well, you go after him. And everybody on the server makes sure that everybody else knows that there is a friendly killer in their midst, and they will gang up on that player and teach them that it is not okay to pick on friendlies. People are pretty respectable to one another in duels. They typically end up saying something like good fight or good game, along the lines of that. Now, of course, there's thousands of people playing the game. You can't have everybody being saints. But from my experience, we've had some really nice people. And again, I know with time the community might become toxic, might change, might become like chivalry for a bit. But, you know, a few times I've been able to connect to a server and maintain connection, I've noticed good people. Granted, there is still an issue of there is no duel mode. It's just there's a deathmatch mode, which is just everybody for himself, which is the mode that I play a lot and that a lot of other people frequent. But you see a lot of duels going on. It's a lot of one-on-one combat. But you still have an issue with this game like you have in Chivalry, where people will gang up on people. And it's kind of obnoxious. But it's expected. I just was hoping it wouldn't happen so soon. But I'm hoping that the devs will eventually add a set-in-stone duel mode where it's just based on duels, where you can challenge people to a one-on-one duel where it's just you and that person. And nobody else, no interference. Just you and them against one another. Because Chivalry has that. But this game, as of now, doesn't. So, I look forward to in the future when hopefully that's implemented. I'm not going to say it is because I don't know about the devs. I don't know the devs. But I must say, the devs have proven themselves to be very competent. And very good at what they do. They listen to the community. And day 2, if you look on the news page for this game on Steam, you see that they're constantly... Today they posted several announcements saying, hey, we know the coin system and the experience system is on the fritz right now. But don't worry, we will fix it soon. We figured out what's causing the bug, and we're on track to have it fixed. They're open with the community of what they're doing. And this is very good, especially early on in the game. I know that like at least several thousand people had the game in early alpha, but now we have so many more people tuning in that it's important to maintain communication with such a vast variety of people. It makes it important. Now, I want to say a couple things for those who might be watching on console. I'm struggling to see this game on console. If you take a peek at the game's keybind list, it's like freaking Arma 3. There's like a lot of keybinds. And you know, it works with a keyboard and mouse because with gaming mice, a lot of them have buttons on the side you can bind things to. And a keyboard, well, it's a keyboard. You have a lot of wiggle room with that. So you can bind things to whatever you want. But with a controller, well, I believe controller support is in the game, so I'm sure you can play on consoles if a console port is ever released. But it's gonna be very difficult to do half the stuff you do on the PC version on the console because the console doesn't have nearly as much customizability or keybind room. Which is a bummer for those people who want to play on console, because I know that Chivalry's on console, and that's great, but with how complicated this game is, I'm sure they can do it, but it's going to be a hassle to get all the keybinds working properly. So as of now, if you're playing this on PC and you want to use a controller, don't use a controller. Console players, I'm sorry, I hope that they can get you a port. I really do, and I'm sure they'll do an excellent job. But it might take time. Because, like I said, there's a lot of keybinds. I've absolutely fallen head over heels for this game. When I've had the rare opportunity of actually staying connected to a server, I've had fun with playing multiplayer, and playing with bots hasn't been that bad either. Although I will say for modes like the game's Horde mode, which is kind of like a Left 4 Dead style survival mode where it's just you against waves of, like, starting out from like peasants to knights and stuff like that. But it's near impossible to do by yourself. They swarm you. There's a lot of them, and it's incredibly hard to deal with by yourself. So I recommend playing with friends. And especially when servers are on the fritz, I'd recommend getting friends who play and trying to set up like private servers or something. Or finding low populated servers. Because I'm sure those might have better connection with fewer people on them. That being said, guys, that's my take on Mordhau. If I were to give this game a number rating, I would give this game a 9 out of 10. And a 10 out of 10 when some of these things I mentioned get fixed, which I am more than sure that they will. Now, I know this review has been very simplified. I haven't covered nearly as much stuff that's in this game. I've barely scratched the surface of what's in it. I've covered the bare necessities, though, what you'll need to know when you actually get into the game. And there's still a lot to do. A lot I don't know, and a lot that's yet to be added. And I'm looking forward to seeing where this game goes, because I can see this game, it has a lot of potential. And I believe it'll be absolutely great. Especially if it can maintain this player base. But I know this review is simplified, and if you were hoping for an incredibly detailed review, I'd recommend checking out Bullet Berry's Bullet Point review. While it is a review of the alpha, a lot of the things that he talked about still stand in the game. I may actually link that video in the description below. Check it out there. Anyway, guys, I do hope you enjoyed my first take of a review. If you did, please let me know. And I'll be sure to find some other games that are out of the blue. I already have a couple in mind. Anyway, guys, thanks again for watching, and as always, Maxusthebeast is out.